Google's AI just took the lead. Here's why Apple users are happy.
Hello and welcome to the All Future Podcast. We're here multiple times a week. We're talking about tech, we're talking about the future, and we're talking about, once again, how a company is doing AI better than Apple, I guess. But I think the real headline here is Gemini 2 out, got some pretty nice features, and then you combine that with this new thing Google's talking about, Project Mariner, and its ability to kind of like actually do AI actions and all this kind of stuff. Cool things, I think, exciting things, and I think some importance of the future and where the stuff is headed, and especially, I think, and we can get into it a little bit, in terms of things like SEO and the internet in general, I guess.
Yeah, so Gemini 2.0 is officially out now, and I think it's in what they're calling experimental beta still, but you can get access to it through the Gemini web app. And with the rollout of 2.0, they're talking about how this is like they're going to be putting it in everything now. This is their much better version of it. They're going to be putting it in Google Docs. Every Google thing you can think of, it's going to have a Gemini form to it, I guess. And some of the cool things that they're adding is that 2.0 is as good as the current Pro model. So the base version of it is getting much more capability. It's kind of the same thing we saw with GPT not too long ago, where they upgraded the free version to be just as good as the paid version. You just have limited tokens and stuff. And then it also natively can generate audio and images and bring new multimodal capabilities like across the board. But the big thing here is agents. So Google said, I think 2025 is the year of the agent for AI. And yeah, it raises a lot of questions, but also I think this is where AI really gets exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And I was just, what this made me think of, right? When I saw the announcement, I was reading about it, I was like, what would this have to get me to switch from using ChatGPT as kind of my primary LLM assistant thing in my life, right? And what Google's doing is something Google has done with a couple of other products before, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, is that they're essentially kind of brute forcing it into everything, right? So like if it's just always in front of you, you're going to start using it. And so they basically have the greatest free advertising platform in the world, right? So if you start to use it just because it's built into Google Docs or Gmails or whatever you're doing, and you are already, say, an OpenAI person, I still don't think Gemini is as good as OpenAI or ChatGPT, rather. But if it starts to get close, I'm at least going to be able to see it since Google is integrating it into everything, right? It's not like I'm going to have to go seek it out and go, oh, maybe I should try Gemini today, see if it's any better. It's like, oh, no, it's going to be in my face all the time. So the second it gets even close, I might start going, oh, maybe it's time to switch over. Like this is performing just as good, and it has this integration.
Yeah, I know people who don't experiment with AI at all, and they've talked to me how they're actually starting to rely on the Google-generated AI result because it automatically puts it right at the top there. And they're good about it. Like they will double-check and fact-check stuff if it seems odd at all. But for some certain simple things, they're just like, okay, that's good enough for me. It gives me the answer that I needed from my Google search. So yeah, just like you're saying, like they're just putting it right in front of you to where you're automatically going to be seeing it. So if I'm on Google Docs and then I typically would be like, let me help paste this over to GPT for some help. Now it's like I might be able to just click a button, or it automatically does it and I see the result and go, not as good. Let me copy and paste elsewhere. Or, oh, wow, that's pretty much just as good. And it's right here and built in.
Yeah. And if you look at Google's kind of times they've done this sort of things in the past, right? I think probably most successfully is when they did it with Google Chrome and how Google Chrome is now kind of like, I don't want to say the default browser for a lot of people, but it kind of is, right?
Yeah, I think it's like over 60%.
Yeah, something crazy,
Chrome,
right?
So.
But on the other side, you have things like Google Plus, their social media platform that never went anywhere. Or I think they had at one time it's called Google Wave, right? So they have had things that they've tried to do this method on that have not worked. What it really comes down to is their version actually better? And I think you could argue, especially during Chrome's kind of meteoric rise and kind of beating out Firefox and Internet Explorer on the PC side and challenging Safari pretty successfully on the Mac side, it was kind of a better product. Like it was a better browser. It seemed faster. It had more features.
Hmm.
Whether if you look at something like Google Plus, was it ever actually better than just using Facebook? If that's what you're looking for, some kind of social media thing, and it
Yeah.
wasn't. So is Gemini actually going to be better than its competitors? And if so, Google's absolutely going to win just again because they can get all those eyeballs.
Yeah, and this Mariner extension is basically an experimental Chrome extension that will browse the web for you. So this is the thing we've talked about a lot on this podcast. Once something's able to do this, that will be a very good thing. Obviously, once it gets through all the safety precautions and it actually proves to be useful and effective. But they are starting to go with that into the future, and I'm really curious to see what that is going to be and what access is going to be like and what websites it will be limited to start. Like maybe it will simply be like round up all the news that I want to see this week or today from the websites I like gathering news from, and then it gives me an update in the morning. But maybe soon enough it'll actually be doing some agent type actions because that's what they want this to do. So it goes out, finds info, and actually can take actions on your behalf. Which sounds scary, but also very exciting because that's the stuff we want.
Right. And yeah, like the scary this is what they want this thing to do. They want this thing to go shopping for you, right? Like so they can make revenue somehow from it. So yeah, like that's yeah, I mean this is gonna happen no matter what, right? Like I mean it already is happening, having AI things actually have executable abilities. And
Hmm.
yeah, obviously, I mean, we've talked about this many times. All these different weird safety concerns, all these like consumer protection concerns, all this kind of stuff. But this is a thing I think people are going to be interested in, and people are going to want. And so, if that's the case, it's going to happen, right? Because
Yeah.
if people want it and someone can make money from it, it's going to come to fruition. So, and now this, yeah, this is the tip of the iceberg, and yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I will say with the introduction of this, it is starting to get me thinking about trying to use Gemini. I've really not experimented much with Gemini. I've mostly just been in GPT because it's saving my chat logs and everything in there. But yeah, this gets me thinking more about this, especially since they're going to be doing the agents. I wonder if they're going to be first or it's just going to be more easily integrated because I already have Google Apps and stuff on my iPhone. And that's kind of the larger point here that we're going to get to is just that Google is able to already be integrated into iOS and Apple devices. So Apple users are going to have access to all of this stuff by default. And so any move in the AI space right now is good for everybody basically if they're into using these features.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of that, yeah, it just got me thinking about this other kind of note we have here of these other things Google's talking about doing. And this seems like a no-brainer that it's crazy no
Hmm.
one's already kind of implement this easily on the front end. And that's having scheduled prompts.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about this before. I guess one of the limitations of kind of chat GPT, all these things as they exist now, is that they essentially, it rewrites their memory every time you open a new chat window. And the things that it does have access to that have, it has, quote, memorized, right, is just straight data points. It doesn't actually like, I can't tell it like, hey, in 3 weeks, I want you to say this back to me or something. That's just not, that doesn't do that, right? It doesn't happen. So things like scheduling prompts, that's kind of a feature that if Gemini had it and ChatGPT didn't, I might start thinking about it, right? I think of things that this could be useful for, right? Like, say you want to, I don't know, completely randomize your morning routine and your breakfast every day or something, right? You could have it just at 8 a.m. every day. It runs the prompt. It says, hey, here's what's going on. Like, it just, you already write your perfect prompt once and then it re-executes it every time in the morning. There's obviously a million other things. And when you're talking about
Hmm.
having to start AI agent integration, having times-based prompt is going to be kind of critical to that, depending on how they implement the AI
Hmm.
execution, right? So, yeah, so this seems like a no-brainer to me, and it could be a great practical feature that makes a difference between using Gemini or GPT.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the point we're at right now where you still always need a human prompting it because then hopefully the human is reviewing the result and deciding whether it's good or not and should be acted upon, I guess. And as these things get better though, we're going to be fine with it completely out of our sight, doing the thing we know it's going to do at a certain time, and we're going to trust that the information is going to be good. So I think that's why we haven't fully seen this, even though it seems very obvious. But that's probably for the more complex stuff. I'm sure there's so many things that it could do today, like you said, just remind me to do something in the future, and maybe that reminder is like multi-stepped, where it's tracking down the address of the location you need to go and reminds you an hour before you need to leave based on traffic, like stuff that already kind of happens, but just the next level of it that's actually much smarter than what we get with like Siri suggestions today.
Right, exactly. Like it's got to have that like obviously I can just set a reminder on my phone, right? That's not a big deal. But
Yeah.
if what the prompt does is tell you something that in data that is unknown to me at this current time, then it makes a difference. The traffic example, maybe a classic example of that, but you could actually do it even more complex than that. Like in 2 weeks, remind me based on how far I've gotten in writing my novel, how many pages I need to write today to get back on pace or something like that, right? So there's like there's a math problem there with data that doesn't exist yet. That would be obviously handy, and I'm sure we're going to start as these things get more advanced and integrated and safer with the privacy side. I think everyone's going to have this. And what this actually makes me think, though, in this whole conversation we've had with, we've talked about Gemini, which is kind of the main topic, so that makes a lot of sense, and we kept comparing it to ChatGPT. A thing that we barely mentioned is the Apple side, right? You mentioned that, you'll be able to have this stuff if you have the Google apps and stuff, but the argument wasn't, and Apple Intelligence, I'm sure, will have this ability, because it looks like, that's probably not happening, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was overall when they first announced the GPT integration, they clarified later that it's going to be multiple that you can do. So in theory, you could in the future have Gemini integrated in the way GPT is integrated, but we haven't seen really any signs of that coming anytime soon. So maybe in the future this does get integrated on the Siri side of things, but it seems for now that Apple Intelligence is its own completely separate thing that we'll see. It feels like they're going to be behind Google for some time, but maybe it's a behind that we don't really care about, like 1 to 2 years where we don't really feel it. And unless you're at the forefront of it, you don't really care because the people at the forefront can just be like, okay, I can use this other app to do that task. And then in a year or two, Apple will be able to do a similar version of it. And then the general public gets to use it on the Apple side of things. They know it's private. They know it's hopefully doing a lot of stuff on device and all that stuff.
And just talking about Google in general and where they're going, it makes me think of 2025 stuff that's going to happen like this year, right? Or at least we're going to start to see the inkling of that reach the consumer side of things. And on the Google side, you got, look at if they're, hey, we're going to make sure our AI is integrated into every product we have. Boom. So you're definitely going to see it. Then, by the way, we're also going to make our AI so where it can execute things within your browser, right? So, boom, that's going to be there. And then they go, all right, guys, and this is them talking back to themselves and not to the consumer, is, so how do we actually make money? Oh, that's right, getting people to click on ads. So, like, if they are controlling that entire loop of stuff, right, they can control who actually gets the ad clicks, right? Because if the human never even sees it, how does that AI model determine what thing to buy or something like that, or what thing to add to the cart, if we're using the shopping example? And it kind of disintegrates the entire current SEO model. And again, I think this is why Google is investing so much in this and is pushing forward so rapidly with it, is because I don't think they want a world where GPT kind of solves all your problems and you never have to see a Google landing page or a Google AdSense ad in some website. They got to be thinking that could happen to them, and that's what they're trying to head off by adding all these features so fast.
Yeah, it kind of is I don't know, that's their entire business model right now. So it seems really crazy for them to be going so hard in this direction, but it is the future and they have to compete. Otherwise, other people are going to do what they're doing. So, yeah, like you're saying, they just sent me down a whole spiral thinking about ads because within their nature, an ad has a certain level of, I guess, deception to it where it's being served to the people that will respond to that ad. And in some cases, these people absolutely wanted that product, and it's perfect because that's what they wanted. Oh, here it is. Now I can get it. I'm happy. Everything's good. I'm cool that I got an ad. But in some cases, people are being served the ad and maybe choosing this product over something else that would have made them happier, but they're not actually aware of that product. And in this case, you could get to a future where there's like 100% certainty on ads and conversions to where the AI knows that everybody so well that they know exactly who to serve this ad to for a 100% conversion rate. And that's a really weird thing for business that they can just perfectly access everybody that wants their product.
Yeah, it's the death of the ad agents, the ad industry
Hmm.
in some ways, right? Because,
Yeah.
and it depends on how far you go with it. Like, there's a version of it where, yeah, it serves the ad with 100% certainty of a click through, so that there's still a human in the loop, right? Um,
Hmm.
but is there a version of it where all it has to do is impress your AI, so it's
Yeah.
100% click through for the artificial copy of you, but not for you? And then, then there's not really a buy-in from the human in the loop there at all, right?
Hmm.
It's just, oh, the human's like, oh, I'm out of coffee, or even more probable, right? The refrigerator detects how much is left of whatever I'm running low on eggs. It automatically uses its AI agent to order eggs. The AI clone of you is the one that knows what kind of eggs you like. Some AI advertises a choice of eggs to the AI, your AI, and then it buys it, right? So it's like it's just it's a completely different. Yeah, you can completely take all human agency out of it.
Yeah, man. Uh, it's kind of like you see it and it's like this is where it's going and it's just so scary. But we're here, so this is what we have. But anyways, for 2025, another prediction I guess in this space would be I think there's going to be a lot of rolling out and rolling back of things. When you have agents that are able to do things, they're going to roll it out. It's going to be very exciting. Then there's going to be all those news stories about, it told me to put glue on a pizza, the equivalent of that, what we saw when Google initially launched their summaries thing. And so people are going to obviously figure out how to automate tasks we don't want people to be doing in the first place. And so it seems like that is going to be the top thing that I think we'll be seeing these companies dealing with is we want these features for everyone, but also people are going to abuse them. So we have to be very safe and cautious and roll things back when things go wrong.
Right. And I hope that's the version of the future we get, and not them just barreling forward even when it goes disastrously wrong, disastrously
Hmm.
wrong. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, we've been talking about this kind of stuff. I mean, almost a year, and it's crazy in this year, just since we've been doing podcast stuff or whatever, that how advanced some of these things have gotten, right? How fast it's grown just in this year. So if you're looking
Yeah.
at what's going to happen next year, like, geez, like it can be everything from, oh, it's been kind of stagnant and we didn't even get the features they promised us, to like, oh man, like there's an AI model that can run my whole universe now. So
Hmm.
I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another prediction, I guess, I'm curious what your thoughts are on this, is just that the idea of like an AI lead or a company that's at the forefront while everyone else is trying to catch up seems to be kind of over or in the past because it feels like every company is simultaneously, at least when they're heavily invested in it, they're simultaneously working on things that are pretty much on par with everyone else, and if not, they get there fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, I think I think it depends on what you mean by you say AI lead, right? Like, who has the lead in like actual tech, who has the lead in implementation,
Hmm.
and I think the real answer is going to be who's going to have the lead in terms of market penetration, right? And that is, I think, you very clearly going to be the exact ones that we would have expected to have that lead, with the one exception of OpenAI. Like, every other company you think of is a big established tech company that people have known are big established tech companies for the last decade. OpenAI is the one that is kind of an upstart in the whole system there. And despite obviously their huge investments from a lot of institutional companies, including Microsoft, obviously, But I guess if you think about it that way, if you include Microsoft and OpenAI together, the leaders are going to be exactly who we thought they're going to be, and it's going to be who can make the best product that people want to buy the most of the fastest. Maybe it's Apple with iPhones. Maybe it's just Google putting Gemini into every Gmail account in the world, right? So
Yeah, with the rapid development, I'm very curious what it's like on Apple's side internally right now. Are they still like freaking out, or are they seeing themselves catching up already in some regards, but they're not pushing it because they like to wait before things are working a little better before they release it to everybody? Because it seems like, I guess, of anyone, they'd be the ones that are behind, as we talk about, and then into the future, what does that look like? Is it that thing that I mentioned earlier where they're 2 years behind, but it doesn't really matter for the average iPhone user because they will get those features in time? Or are they far enough behind that it's like, okay, we're going to see Gemini integrated into this. We're going to see them, instead of making their own AI the primary thing, maybe they'll make this ecosystem where you can access it much better.
right. Or if I can offer you an alternative, Apple has all the internal data on iPhone sales and realizes that no one bought an iPhone because of Apple intelligence, and no one's buying Google phones because of AI, and the average consumer doesn't care about it at all. So this, they're just gonna keep on just making phones and being like, who cares? Like, we're not gonna sell one less iPhone because of AI.
Yeah. And I guess where's the turning point on that? When do people care that their phone has AI? Because it definitely does not seem that it was this year. There's probably a handful of people that bought their phone because it has Apple Intelligence. Because in a T-Mobile commercial, Snoop Dogg told them it's an iPhone designed from the ground up for Apple Intelligence. But now that we've seen Apple Intelligence in its delivered form, I don't think it's a convincing sale. So yeah, how many years until the average person is like, oh, no, I don't want that phone because it doesn't have Apple Intelligence. I want this phone with Apple Intelligence.
Somewhere between like 1 year away and 30 years away. So that zone, I think.
Yeah. In the meantime, we have Gemini accessible to all of us. Gemini 2.0 is here, and it's exciting and terrifying.